And now it's time, 1 o'clock, and I want to welcome everyone to our September 26th council meeting this afternoon. Glad to have you all join us this afternoon. We've noted that all of council is in attendance, therefore we have quorum and our staff are here. Welcome to our staff and media as well. With that, I will call this meeting to order and begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters. With that, I will ask you all to join us in a moment of reflection as we consider the business before us this afternoon. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of interest around the table, pecuniary or otherwise? Seeing none, it can be declared if the occasion should arise during the discussions. We'll move now on to announcements. Are there any announcements from council to put on the table? Deputy Mayor, see anybody else? And wait, you go first.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. I have just two announcements today. And the first, on behalf of our Chamber of Commerce, the 14th annual Meaford Dragons event is upcoming. And right now they are looking for contestants. So the call for contestants is out until October the 7th at 12 noon. So if anyone has a new business or is looking to expand their business, they are welcome to make an application to the Chamber. And the complete business plans will be due on October the 20th. So there's still time to become a contestant. My second announcement, this is, to me, I find this very exciting, and I think you will too. We have 3 new businesses looking to get open in our downtown. One is a bakery cafe, the other is an IT store, and the third is a food market. But they need staff. So if anyone is looking for work, even part-time work, please consider dropping in an application to one of those locations. The bakery and the IT store are going in where Check It Out was, just behind the Independent, the Meaford Independent newspaper office. And they're hiring for a number of positions. They're looking to hire 30 people to work in the cafe, office supplies, computer, cellular, deli market, takeout restaurant. They're looking for managers, counter help, barristers, deli counter cashiers, cooks, and general stock and labor positions. So lots of opportunity there, and let's come together and help these businesses get open and be successful in Meaford. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a couple. Okay, do you have some, Councillor Bartley? All right. Just wanted to remind residents of the urban Meaford that sanitary sewer fog testing still continues. Affected residents will be notified with a hand-delivered notice, a little card on your door knob. You can also find more information about the program, including the work schedules and with frequently asked questions for further information at meaford.ca/fog testing. The second announcement is an exciting one as well. We are going to be hosting an official ceremony to welcome our Indigenous crosswalk that has been installed between Nelson and Syke Street between the TD Bank and Meaford Hall. And we're looking forward to this, to celebrate this on September the 30th, the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. This day honors the children who never returned home and survivors of residential schools, as well as their families and communities. Public commemoration of the tragic and painful history and ongoing impacts of residential schools is a vital component of the reconciliation process. And just a comment on the crosswalk itself, it consists of 7 white feathers on an orange background, and that represents the 7 guiding principles of respect, love, honesty, courage, humility, truth, and wisdom. Hope that folks can come and join us at 9 o'clock in the morning, or 9:15, I guess, start on that day, September the 30th. So as everyone knows, fall has arrived, the scarecrows are up, and the scarecrow invasion is coming on September the 30th as well. The organizers are looking for more volunteers for this and would encourage anyone interested to check it out on scarecrowinvasion.ca. And the last one, the corresponding one for that weekend, the Meaford Apple Harvest Craft Show, coming up on October the 1st and 2nd at the Meaford and St. Vincent Community Center. Again, all of the details of this craft show that is back again, finally, is at appleharvestcraftshow.ca. And Councillor Bartley, you had an announcement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just an announcement, the Bogner Hall is having another fundraiser. They're selling fish this time, 5-pound packages of fish. You've got rainbow trout, you got smoked trout, Arctic char, pickerel, several things you can buy. If you're interested in helping the Bogner Hall out with a fundraiser and looking for some fish, you can email me at kimjanbar@gmail.com or phone me at 519-794-9980. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley and Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I sort of expected that Councillor Bartley would be announcing the all candidate debates in Bogner, but may we announce those, the all candidate debates that are coming up?
Mm-hmm.
So in Bogner on Tuesday evening, 7 o'clock at Bogner Hall, the all candidate debate for members of council. And then on Thursday evening, the 29th, the debate for mayor and school board at 7 o'clock on both occasions. And then on Monday, October 3rd, an all candidates debate sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce at Meaford United Church. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Not seeing. All right, we'll move on to point 6 on our agenda, public participation. We always look forward to this when we have members of the public to come before us with presentations or deputations on items that are on the agenda for discussion, further information, and for public questions. We have 2 presentations this afternoon. The first one is from Melody Wright with regard to the Georgian Bay Youth Roots Community Bursary Program update, and we'll turn it over to you, Melody. Welcome. It's been a while since we've seen you here.
Oh, thank you. Well, I guess this is the computer. All right. So, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor and Council, my name is Melody Wright, and yes, I'm one of the co-chairs of Georgian Bay Youth Roots. And just thank you for this opportunity to be with you this afternoon. Just thought I'd give you a little bit of background about who we are. So we are a partnership of a variety of different organizations from municipality of Meaford and Town of the Blue Mountains. And we're really wanting to give youth a voice in the community and give them opportunities to engage and contribute in both of our communities. And our goal is to work with youth, not for them, but to work alongside them. And so we're committed to supporting youth and their families and just working in the community. And just very thankful for the support that Council gave us through the community grant program to offer some different opportunities for youth in our community. So I've listed a few here. They're kind of hard to read, and I'm going to show you a few pictures as well. But before this work started before the pandemic, and it slowed down a little bit during that time because it was harder to have that face-to-face connection with youth. But we continued to connect and meet and dream about a time when we could connect again. So lots of different things we were able to do with that grant money. We were able to provide an honorarium to youth who were helping to research opportunities in the municipality of Meaford. What are the opportunities for youth? And then also, where are the gaps for youth? So some pre-work was done on that. That was sort of pre-pandemic. And we also did a few different events. So I'll go through a few of them. Some of them are pictures from and some of them are pictures afterwards. So we've actually hosted 2 grade 7 and 8 skating events. And although I recognize these pictures are from the one that we did in the Town of the Blue Mountains, pre-pandemic, we did one that brought together in Meaford, brought together our grade 7 and 8 students from the schools here in Meaford and the schools in the school in Town of the Blue Mountains. And really, we're wanting to bring together those grade 7 and 8s before they get to high school, and hopefully encourage more and more of our grade 7 and 8s to consider GVCS as the school that they would go to when they do hit grade 9. And so we were able to offer a couple of different events to do that, to bring those youth together and hopefully start to build those connections so that they feel like Meaford is their home for school. So we probably had about 200 students involved in both an event that happened before pandemic and then in March of this year. We also have had opportunities, again, at the old GVCS building. We hosted a barbecue at the end of the year for high school students, thanks to your support, opportunity to connect with them, and then also look for their feedback as far as, again, the needs and in our community. And then the next one I wanted to show you was a grade 6 to 8, as it turned out, grade 6 to 8 swimming event that we were able to do as restrictions started to lift. We were able to do that at the pool here in Meaford. And that was for all of the grade 6 to 8 students from GBCS. And there were a variety of things that happened during that time. Again, opportunities for feedback, whether a silly question like, would you rather be from a family of 10 or an only child, that I think you can kind of see on that picture, to, again, is there a need for youth space in our community? And some questions like that, was really interesting to hear their thoughtful answers and see those thoughtful answers appearing on some of the other flip charts that are around that one table, and just to see them come together and to have that opportunity to be active together and to connect with one another. Because that's something we have been noticing about youth in our community, whether they're grade 6, 7, 8 into high school, especially as we're coming out of that time of isolation. They're just really desperate for opportunities to connect. And whether that's connecting with each other, connecting with adults in the community as well, I've just really been noticing and just more and more of a desire for them to do that. We also have offered exam de-stress events at GVCS. And again, we've got a mix of pictures. One of the pictures is from our old GVCS events pre-pandemic, and then we were able to do one this June again. So thrilled to be able to have community members come into the school and let people know what's happening, with the library, with public health, and all sorts of different organizations just that care about youth and just want to connect with them. So, those are some of the ways that we've been able to use the funding that you've given us, and it's just been very valuable for youth in our community. And we look forward to continuing to make good use of that. Just want to remind you that Meaford did get designated as a bronze level youth-friendly community a number of years ago, and we keep kind of not quite sure exactly where that program is right now. We continue to look for information about that. But at this point, you have that bronze level designation, which was a huge accomplishment and pretty awesome to be able to achieve that as a group. And we're going to continue to look for how can we support municipality of Meaford in achieving that again the next time that gets offered to communities to apply for something like that. So looking forward, we want to continue to offer opportunities for grade 6 to 12 to take leadership in our community, to connect with each other. And one of the projects that we're planning on doing is supporting a Beyond High School program to help our upper level high school students prepare for life after high school, whether in the work world or post-secondary education. And that's going to be held at the community center in Meaford here, actually starting in October. So lots of really great things happening, and lots of great things that Meaford does offer to the community and to our youth. So yeah, thank you so much. Youth matter. And I think that comes through in the ways that you are supporting in our community. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Mallory. Your enthusiasm is certainly infectious, and I'm sure that that spurs a lot of young people on to participate. So thank you for your part and your leadership in that. This is a very, very worthwhile program, and we will all see the benefits of this and the work that you're doing and your folks are doing with this program. I'm just wondering if how you were able to connect with this program and the youth during the pandemic, because it certainly is a concern and a worry for many of us, the impact of social isolation and the inability of youth to connect and carry on with their regular school activities, and what kind of an impact is that going to have on their mental health going forward?
Yes, and that is a huge concern going forward, is the ongoing impact to the mental health and wellness of youth in our community. I think a lot of what was happening during the pandemic was, well, whenever we were able to, we were in contact. We definitely, as a group of people who are networking and working together to offer opportunities like that, we continue to meet virtually so that we can continue planning and be ready as soon as things did open up. And so that's why very quickly after restrictions started lifting, we were able to do things like a skating event just before the ice came out in Thornbury, and then the public swimming event as well, because we were still continuing to meet regularly. As we heard about opportunities for youth, because there were virtual opportunities. I know one organization did an online program called COVID Sucks. Let's talk about it, to give youth an opportunity to talk about their grief and loss around COVID and some of the things they were missing. So if we heard about opportunities like that, virtual kinds of, we made sure we got the word out to our youth in our community about those. Also, we did support a project. So GBCS, during a time where they didn't have the same kinds of extracurricular programs, a little harder to put a yearbook together. And so we were able to support, again, well, you were able to support the memory book that was presented to our grade 12 graduating students, because it looked a little different. And so it was a little more challenging to get that all put together when the programs weren't running and student council wasn't raising the money they would normally raise to support something like that. So we were able to have, and you were able to have, a small piece in our grade 12s then leaving with a memory like that of their time in Meaford. So it looked different. It definitely looked a lot different than it does now.
But it was better than what they would have had otherwise if you hadn't taken that initiative.
Yes, and every like even our meeting, like I know it looked different as far as the actual face-to-face in the school connections, but we wanted to keep going so that we'd be ready then when we were able to connect face-to-face with them again.
Great, thank you. Any questions, Councillor Kentner?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, Melry, do you have any sense, as a result of your, contact with youth, as to the impact of COVID on learning and on grades?
I'm not sure about the grade part of it specifically. I do know from conversations with people that it is a struggle. Like it's a struggle now, as much as people want to be back face to face. It's a little challenging when you haven't been together. You're not familiar with your teachers, and now you're an upper level student. You're not familiar with what it even means to connect with each other. So I think it's a period of adjustment right now. I'm definitely hearing about greater challenges to mental health and wellness. Being in the high school, it's interesting. So I've done, again, pre-pandemic and starting back into it again, a weekly table at the high school. Took a little while to build up, I think, for people to build up their courage to come in and see me, because I wasn't familiar necessarily to them. And so it took a while to build up the numbers of people that would come to the table, answer my random would you rather question, and get information about community offerings for youth. Really interesting. The very first table I went back and did after restrictions lifted, I had more than 100 students come and tick off one of my boxes and just kind of interact around the question. So I sort of a long rambling kind of answer, but I sense this need for connection, and I'm hearing that too from teachers in the school. That sense of being able to socialize and connect with each other is a big need and a challenge.
Sure. Thank you for that. Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation today.
You're welcome.
Those of us that have opportunity, and I consider it a privilege to work with young people, we have a bit of a secret that we hold inside our hearts. And that secret is that sometimes we will never get to know whether we have made a good positive impact on the next generation. And it gives us pleasure, those of us that work with youth, to know that that next generation has seen those that go before, that you can make a difference. And I thank you for your work.
You're welcome.
Well said, Councillor Bell. With that, Mallory, thank you again for your presentation, and keep up the good work. We're delighted to be a sponsor of your program.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, you're welcome.
Our second presenter this afternoon is Robert Foster. Short-term rental concerns. Welcome, Bob.
Madam Mayor, members of council and staff, my name is, as the mayor said, Robert Foster, and I'm a year-round resident at 261 Cedar Avenue, Sunnyside Beach. I thank you for your valuable time to address you today and hopefully increase your awareness of an issue which is of great concern to a large number of Meaford residents, and that is short-term rentals or STAs or Airbnbs, whatever you wish to call them. I'm not representing any organization today, just some very concerned property owners, and quite a few of them are with me here today. When we moved to Meaford and settled on Cedar Avenue, we were attracted to the beauty and the serenity of the neighborhood and the people living there, and we've thoroughly enjoyed living there for the last 12 years. But recently, that enjoyment and of many of my neighbors has been impacted by the proliferation of short-term rentals. I want to make it clear from the outset that these concerns are not directed at responsible owners who share their homes or cottages. The worst instances are absentee owners who do not personally use their properties, but instead operate them purely as a rental business or unregulated hotel. I have spoken informally to 4 of you individually, and your individual responses were that you weren't hearing much of the topic from citizens. But I stand here today to assure you that there is a huge and growing level of upset and concern from the people I encounter. I suggest to you that the lack of noise, pardon the pun, is because residents either don't know how to raise concerns or are waiting for someone else to do it for them. I do not canvass for support for my initiative today, but only through casual contact with acquaintances, I have garnered 23 names in support from across Meaford. That is Cedar Avenue, the north side, which is known locally as Black Point Beach, Sunnyside Beach, Kiawana Beach, and Christie Beach, which spans quite a distance. I have provided the list of these names and addresses to the clerk. Some of these supporters are here with me today, and others are viewing this by live stream. It is worth noting that the list would have been considerably longer, but some people who are enthusiastic supporters didn't want their names publicly available for fear of retribution from next door rental operators, which is alarming in itself. All these neighborhoods are affected, some more than others, but everyone is worried about the proliferation of these properties, which have increased exponentially this year. We live in fear that the new group arriving next door every few days is going to create the next Animal House scene, which is occurring with regularity at some properties. All the reports that are seen in media and TV from other jurisdictions all are in play here. Some of my supporters have told me that when requesting partiers to dial it down, they are confronted with the statement, they are paying good money to rent the place and they can do what they want. Owners are also afraid to confront large numbers of intoxicated partiers next door and afraid of the potential of retaliation from unknown strangers. To give some context, here are some numbers. On Cedar Avenue North, that's the Black Point portion, there are 7 STAs and 1 being prepared for next year. On Cedar Avenue Sunnyside, there are 5 and 4 being prepared for next year. On Kiawana Beach, there are 2. On Christie Beach, there are 3. That's 22 in all in that short little stretch of streets. In the last 18 months, every property in my area that is sold or changed ownership has now become an STA. A very worrying trend and reality that we now see developing in our neighborhoods is that longtime owners, residents, and valuable community members are selling and moving due to their own personal experience with Airbnb next door or fear of next door becoming one. One of those people is here today. The problem is with when someone purchases a property, an investor doesn't really care about who lives next door, but a potential residential buyer, they certainly do care, and they won't purchase that property. So it creates the ugly cycle where the neighborhood changes from a quiet residential area to a place where no one wants to live. This is not some far off scenario for the future. It is happening before your eyes, and action needs to be taken to head this off. Some of the issues that we face are the often cited incidents of continuous turnover of guests, resulting in loud music, fireworks, smoke from fires, and parking problems. The next is the impact to neighborhoods in the greater municipality extends beyond the noise and disruption to life. We are all on septic systems, and none are designed to handle the gross overloading that is occurring and impacting Georgian Bay. Just yesterday at 2 properties near me, one had 9 vehicles and another 8 for the entire weekend. Typically, that's 2 people per vehicle. So I'll let you do your own math on what the occupancy rates were at those properties. No residential septic system is designed to handle this, and outflows and improperly treated effluent drain straight into Georgian Bay. Garbage left behind is excessive and has to be left out by renters in the day they leave, and then it's there for days for the animals to tear into and spread all over. There's extra policing costs, which we're seeing this year for OPP calls for service. These people typically do not enhance the local economy by shopping or going to restaurants. They bring their own coolers of food and drink for their 2 days that they're there, and then they leave. These properties remove housing stock from the long-term rental housing market, aggravating an already tight rental market. Negative impacts, and these negatively impact the livelihood of legitimate hotel operators in town. And lastly, property values are affected, and certainly in a negative way. It has been suggested, and I confess without evidence, that commercial buyers are buying available properties in Meaford due to the lack of regulations versus other jurisdictions that have controls in place. With respect, I would suggest that if a resident wished to erect a 110 square foot bunkie on their property for the grandchildren to sleep in, they would encounter a long list of regulations, inspections, and permits to comply with at various levels of government. Yet the property owner next door can operate as an unregulated hotel, pays no fees or revenue to any level of government. I ask, is that right or is it fair? Residents are frustrated that the existing complaint system is reactive, does not work, and is ineffective. Expecting Airbnb and or owners to deal with problems is ineffective, unrealistic, and reactive, not proactive. It's akin to the old saying of giving the fox the keys to the hen house. Action needs to be taken before next year to turn the situation around, or it will get worse. It would be, again, unrealistic and overly simplistic to suggest that banning short-term rentals would be a solution. And it's not my place to suggest solutions. That is the job of council. But many communities around us have enacted bylaws which claim to be effective in managing these same problems. My expectation in appearing today is to bring the matter to council's attention, receive an acknowledgement of the seriousness, and a commitment to action. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Robert, for a very professional presentation. You've included an awful lot of information there, and we're very, very grateful for the interest that you've taken in bringing it before council. I think you've met your objective of bringing it before us for some kind of discussion in the future. I will open it up to Councillor Vickers, you're first.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Bob, I'd like to thank you also for doing that. I would be in one of the categories of not realizing how big of an issue this is getting. Living up where I live, and is a long way from the beach area, and it does seem to be, and it doesn't just seem to be, it is getting to be a problem. And I think council, in their next term, will have to take a long, hard look at it to see what kind of things we can do to help control this sort of rowdyism.
Okay. Councillor Bartley, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and Robert, thank you very much. Very well put together. If you want acknowledgement, I'm acknowledging. This is an issue. It's an issue not just for Meaford, it's for every municipality in the province, actually. This council has talked about it on occasion, but it is time to get down serious because it is an issue. It's a serious issue, and don't know how we can curtail it. I know South Bruce Peninsula just put a few bylaws in that they seem to have curtailed it. So this council has to do something, and staff with them, to curtail this, because it's just, they're running rapid, and I acknowledge the issue and we will get at it.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Foster, for bringing that to our attention today. I can tell you that over the summer months, complaints about Airbnbs were the number one concern that I heard about as deputy mayor. And just to share, and I know we talked about this when we had our official plan public meeting, there's quite a bit of language in there directed at Airbnb short-term vacation rentals with the intent, as I understand it, that then allows us to go forward and talk about doing something more serious in terms of licensing or however the next council chooses to approach the issue. But I recognize they are a growing number. They are everywhere now, and I agree. People are coming and they're enjoying Meaford, and that's great. But they're perhaps not necessarily supporting our economy in the way that we'd like them to, and they are causing concerns. And I do hope your neighbors are calling bylaw and calling the OPP when these situations arise, because it's important for those concerns to be registered for both bylaw, the municipality, and the OPP to be aware of where these units are. Right now, we don't even have a listing of where they all are. They're just popping up everywhere, as you say. So I also wanted to just let you know that I brought forward a motion a few months ago now to council, which was accepted. And in that we speak to, as you have talked about, Bob, in your presentation to us today, the fact that these are taking homes away from rental opportunities. And we know how desperate we are for housing accommodation in this municipality. So staff will be working on that report. I don't think we'll see it on until the next term, but please know that we appreciate your words to us today, and that we are aware, and the next council will be addressing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Robert, for coming forward today. Your problem doesn't just exist out on in the Sunnyside Beach area. I'm hearing the same complaints. Our west coast of Sydenham, all along the coast there. The third line, St. Vincent, County Road 11, same problems. Airbnbs. It seems to be our own little local pandemic that is breaking out, and it's certainly not healthy in many cases. Yes, the new council definitely has to be one of their priorities. We need to have a very serious control system put in place, and one that can be enforced. And it's all right to have bylaws, but you've got to have some punch behind them. So yeah, I guarantee you, we're hearing you, and this has to be addressed. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Thank you, Robert. And I just like to say that there are ample templates available now. Every municipality similar to Meaford has already stepped up and dealt with this, and we just need to choose from among the templates and make sure we get the best elements of each. Thank you.
I think perhaps your mission has been accomplished partially today. So mission accomplished. But thank you again for bringing it to our attention, and to all of those who came along for support. You've made an impression, and certainly we're happy to take that under advisement. Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, we do have public questions on our agenda as well. I believe there was one registered, maybe not. No, don't see it. Okay. Oh, okay, Flynn, please come forward. Tell us your name and that's your question.
And thank you, council and staff, for listening to my question today. So my question is regarding 9B on the agenda, and this question is directed to staff. Today's agenda 9B indicates that an Ontario Land Tribunal appeal has been received by the municipality regarding 12 Bayfield Street, 23 and 37 Trowbridge Street East. This is the second Ontario Land Tribunal appeal launched by a developer who has made a development proposal for Meaford. Skydev has also appealed to the provincial government to make their case. Please help me to understand why this has occurred. Second part to this question, is there a course of action that the municipality of Meaford should take in the future to keep the decision-making in Meaford? Thank you, and I'll wait for your answer to staff.
Thank you for your question, Sue. I really appreciate that. I'm not sure that we'll have an answer for you.
I can provide a quick answer, Madam Mayor, rather than
time.
waiting till we deal with it on the agenda. There's a couple of different things here, I think. One is to answer the second part of the question first. There's nothing that we can do to make sure that all decision making is made in the municipality, because even after council makes a decision in favour or against an application, applicants or other interested parties are always going to be able to appeal that to the OLT if they wish to. I suspect perhaps the question is more focused on these couple of examples where we've had ones where the appeal is about us not having made a decision in time and that deadline. This has come about, in my opinion, and this really is my opinion, I'm not a planning lawyer, because of some of the changes that the province has made over the last few months. The Planning Act has always included these deadlines, 90 days for zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for zoning and OP amendment from the time an application is deemed complete. They've always been there, but there's not a single one of the 444 municipalities in the province of Ontario who's ever abided by those deadlines, because the planning process is complicated. What's happened in the last 6 months is that the province has passed legislation to say that municipalities have to abide by those deadlines. Otherwise, we're going to have to start paying fees back to applicants on a prorated basis. I think it's 25% for the first month, it's 50% after that, and so on. What that has done, in my opinion, is meant that other developers who have already got applications in the system, who that change in legislation doesn't apply to, have been reminded that there is a deadline, and that means that they have the ability to appeal, and so have taken up that opportunity to do so. I think what we will be doing, and Council's already seen a couple of reports from Rob Voigt, our Director of Development Services, about the things that we will have to do slightly differently, including some of our fee structures, in order to be able to process these sorts of applications within a quick time frame. And the other thing is that some applications will likely come forward with a recommendation for rejection, because if we only have 90 days and the applicant hasn't given us enough information, then we are likely to recommend to council that they shouldn't go forward. So that's basically what it will be, is that as of the passage of the new legislation, we have to meet these deadlines, otherwise we're going to lose the fees. So we just will be meeting the deadlines, but these are files that have existed for some time already.
Thank you for that, Matt.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Reasonable explanation. Thank you for your question. Okay, we will move on now to 8.1 on our agenda. This is the consent agenda. We have 6 items that have been, sorry, I skipped it again. Thank you for the reminder. I'm going to backtrack a little bit to point 7 on our agenda, which is council inquiries, and open it up to council for their questions. And I'm assuming you have one, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I did have one. And I know we'll be discussing, as we mentioned, the OLT later on, but I just wondered if I could ask Mr. Armstrong where we are now with Georgian Bay Terrace, the Legion property. Is it moving forward, and what can you tell us about the status of that particular development?
Is this on? Okay, thanks. So that development is moving forward as far as we know. So we are still actively reviewing it. We've received some new information from them during August and September on the site plan. And so we have seen quite a bit of revision and refinement to make it more approvable so that we can get to that finish line.
likely council won't, because of our new process, council won't be the ones approving the site plan as what would have previously happened because of the changes that were made over the Planning Act on July 1st. So that will be an internal process. But to make sure that everyone's aware that it's done, we will be posting information on our website. And if it's something that council would like to see moving forward, we can provide an information report just saying, hey, this is ready to go. And, you know, those units can now apply for a building permit. But I don't think there's any other, unless the CIO knows something different, I don't think there'll be any other process to come before council to do approval, which should help with some of the timelines moving forward. Does that answer your question?
Through your worship, yes, thank you very much, Denise. It does, although I would like to be made aware when that approval is provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
Through you, your worship. So just to go back to that. So just so I'm clear, we've passed the bylaws that need to be changed, and basically no building permit has been issued because there still needs to be a site plan approval. So it's basically change the bylaws that need to be changed, get a site plan approval, and then a building permit would be issued then. Is that basically is there another step in there? Or just, we get asked a lot of this in the public. So it's just sometimes better if we know the facts.
So from the simplest, yes. So the zoning was changed. And the zoning has a couple of things that are required. So one is a site plan approval prior to moving forward. And another is a holding removal. So there is a piece that will come before council to remove the holding symbol that doesn't allow them to get the building permit. But that's basically at that point going to be sort of a technical aspect. So it's just a thing we do where we say, we're all ready. We can recommend removing the holding symbol. There is also an agreement that would be signed in securities and all of those things. There's a section 37 agreement and a site plan agreement. And those are the behind the scenes workings that would happen. But there is still a holding symbol that would be removed prior to the building permits. I don't think I missed anything else. I think that's it. So there is a little bit more, but I think because those things don't always line up perfectly in what everyone wishes to happen or what everyone's expecting, because they don't know how long the process takes, what we've been doing is just adding those things to the website as they come. So anybody who's signed up for notifications, they're getting those changes. They're getting information about it. And I've got myself on there as a subscriber so that I can kind of monitor, did those emails actually go to the subscribers list, and I can see who's subscribed. And if anyone wishes to be added, they can just ask and I will put them on by email, and they'll get those notifications as well.
Thank you for that. Okay. Yes, subsequent.
Yeah. So basically we have no part in the site plan until it gets submitted, and then we approve it or ask for changes. Yeah. So until they're the ones that have to submit the site plan. So it's not like they're waiting on us. We're waiting on them actually.
Correct. Yes.
And that sometimes gets confused out in the general public. So maybe even at a council table.
For sure. So the site plan was submitted several months ago. So it was submitted and it went through multiple renditions of whether or not it was us making sure that it was deemed complete. So we've been going through that process since the whole time I've been here with you working for the municipality. And council was not involved in that process up until that point because previously we brought you things that were ready to be approved. In the new process, as of July 1st, council won't see those site plans because the province mandated that will be an internal process. And so you've delegated that or named the person to approve that as the Director of Development Services. If that just clarifies the steps. So sometimes people are not sure why they haven't heard anything, but maybe there isn't anything for them to hear just because they're not engaged in that section of the process. And that's why I encourage people to sign up on the website. And if we add new information, then they will get a note, oh, something was approved, or there's new information provided to that subscriber list.
Okay. Deputy Mayor? Back to you then.
Thank you, Your Worship. And if I may, on behalf of Council, Denise, could we all be added to that subscriber list?
Certainly.
All right. Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a question for Mr. Armstrong or Mr. Smith. It's a question that's been asked before, but it seems to be a major concern by a goodly number of our residents, particularly in the former Sydenham area. And that's the ITFD partnership with our municipality. Now, I understand there are still legalities that need to be finalized, but a lot of the good folks particularly in our western area, and this of course affects all the municipality for that matter, but they're really hoping the documents can be presented to council before the end of this term. Is that looking to be possible right now? Can you estimate on that?
Over to you, Matt.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think we had this question at the last meeting and really some have changed, not a lot has changed. To a certain extent, we're at the mercy of lawyers. I've got some stuff out with them and I've got to send them some more things today. The problem with bringing it before this council is that because the next meeting is the last meeting of this term of council, we can have nothing on committee of the whole because you cannot move something from committee of the whole to council across a change in the number of people in the people who are at the table. So we could bring it forward if it's ready and have it approved in one shot straight to council at the October 31st meeting. I would very much prefer not to do that because I think this is something that's important, and so council should have the opportunity to consider it in the normal way over 2 meetings. So in essence, the answer is, unless we're going to do something which would be unusual for us, no, it won't come to this council. But I think the answer is still the same as it was last week, is that the agreement, the updated board agreement is literally that. It's exactly the same. It's just taking that 2001 agreement and making it into sort of a more legal document. It doesn't change anything about the ownership. It doesn't change anything about the financial structure or the services or anything like that. It's just talking about board and board responsibilities and how things are sort of managed on a day-to-day basis. So people can choose to believe me or not, but I would reassure the public is that what's going to come forward is exactly what council's told us to do, which is to have an updated agreement based on the existing structure.
Okay. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I didn't have anything until Harley brought that up. I had talked to staff and it was possible to bring it up before the end of council. And if there's a way of doing it both in one meeting, even though it's a little different than we usually do, I would like to be part of that. I think this council should be part of that. There's no guarantees that we'll be here in the next council. So if it's possible to bring it forward, Mr. Smith, I would like it brought forward and I would like it done in one meeting so it's done and set to bed. Thank you.
Duly noted. I am not seeing any further questions of council. So now we can move on then to motions and bylaws for decision. And first off, we have our consent agenda. We have 6 items that have been before committee of the whole for discussion, and would ask that we'll read the items for discussion and ask if council has any that they wish to pull. First one, CAO 2022-38 is the Municipal Service Delivery Review Final Report. B is COM 2022-24, an accessibility multi-year plan from 2023 to 26. C is a bylaw 2022-61 is the community bursary program changes that we have recommended. D is bylaw 2022-62 to establish a compliance audit committee in terms of reference. And the following then is to a bylaw to appoint members to the compliance audit committee. And F is bylaw 2022-64, the consent agreement B 28-21 for 139087 Gray Road 112. Are there any of those that council wishes to pull for further discussion? Seeing none, I will entertain a mover and a seconder, please. Put that on the table, Councillor Bartley, Councillor Bell, and call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to items for consideration, and the first one off the list is the 2021 audited financial statements. And we will welcome Tracy, our dear friend Tracy that we see every year. Hope you were not feeling well the last time Deputy Mayor and I saw you at Council. I hope that you've improved. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Bell and Councillor Greenfield. Thank you.
Right. I'd like to thank the council for inviting me here. It's so nice to be back in actual person and not on the big screen anymore. I do want to thank Val and Justin and Kathy and all of the finance team for their help and assistance during the audit. As your auditor, we have the responsibility to communicate with those charged with governance, which is you, the council. The required communication is on page 93 of the council agenda, and that contains all the required communications under auditing standards. The report is very similar from year to year, as the accounting standards do prescribe what has to be in that report. I'll provide just a brief summary of that required communication. And then I'll provide just a high-level overview of the draft financial statements, which are also included in Appendix A of that package. If you have any questions, we are live now, so I can see a head nod. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me as we go through the presentation. On the executive summary, the financial statements are presented in a draft, and they do need some recognition by the council before they can be released in final. Once we do have that approval, then we have to obtain a representation letter from your management team and also do subsequent event work up until that date. We do confirm that we are independent on an annual basis, and the materiality that we used for the audit was $700,000. In terms of other required communications, there were no internal control issues or any other issues that arose during the audit that we felt needed to bring to the attention of council. The unadjusted differences are on page 8. They are not material, so we can issue a clean audit report. So that's a very quick summary of the communication. And I'll move a few pages forward to the auditor's report that's in Appendix A, and that's on page 108 of the council package. That is our audit report. Management is responsible for preparing the financial statements. It's our responsibility as your auditor to provide an opinion on those financial statements, on whether they are in accordance with the accounting standards. An audit is the highest level of assurance that a public accounting firm can provide. And our opinion is on the second paragraph. And in our opinion, those financial statements are prepared in all material respects in accordance with accounting standards for public sector entities. And so that means that it's a clean opinion and there was no issues that arose, came to our attention. Just a quick highlight of those financial statements. On page 4 of the financial statements, or page 111 of the council agenda package, is the statement of financial position, or your balance sheet. So that's at a point in time on December 31st, 2021.
Figuring out where you are.
Okay.
Because I know. Could I make one suggestion?
Sure.
If you would have had a presentation up on the screens, it would have made it somewhat easier.
The presentation is the report. So if we want to bring, I don't know if it's possible at this point to bring the report up, I can bring the report up.
So I do have the page numbers. If that's not doable, what page are you on then, please?
So we're on the actual financial statements. Those were in Appendix A, and that we're on the balance sheet, which is on page 111 of the council agenda package. It's on page 5 of the actual financial statements in the package.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, it's important that we provide information that's understandable. There we are.
So this is our communication, our required communication in the first part. And if we scroll through to Appendix A, you'll get to the actual draft financial statements. Page 111. Or when I looked at it on the website as a person. Well, it's the Appendix A, so
Page 5.
yeah. Yeah, keep going down. No, the other way. Yeah, keep going. You can scroll pretty fast. I'll be able to tell you when to. Okay, now, oh, stop there. All right, so this is our auditor's report. And so then that is where we talk about the clean opinion. And if we go a couple of more pages, you'll get to the balance sheet, which are the actual financial statements prepared by management. Yeah, and so then that's the balance sheet. And so again, this is at a point in time on December 31st of 2021. Financial assets total 24 million, an increase of 3 million over the prior year. Most of the assets are in cash and investments, and they're totaled $18.4 million. So there was an increase of $2 million. And that's mostly because the reserves and your reserve funds increased, as well as the obligatory reserve funds. And the obligatory reserve funds are reflected in the deferred revenue in the liability section. However, there was some cash that was used to pay for unfinanced capital and to reduce your accounts payable. So you had a larger increase in the reserves, which normally means you have that amount of increase in your cash, but then you use some of that cash for your capital assets.
Tracy, can you just stop for a second? We're having difficulty. Not coming? Can you see? Do you have found it? Are you okay? But what about our audience and what about the?
So, Madam Mayor, our audience won't see the TV screens particularly because they're going to be looking at Tracy through the camera, but they are going to be able to be scrolling through the package online. So I think we should be good.
Is everyone else in sync here? Okay, we've got it all. So, and you're good? Okay.
I will try to make sure that there's a PowerPoint next year that's maybe easier to follow.
It's difficult with all the page numbers too, and how you access the package itself is.
Well, and numbers aren't everyone's favorite, so I'm trying to keep this at a very high level because really the historical financial statements are at a point in time, which was December 31st, and they're really meant to reflect the history. And our opinion on these financial statements is basically to give an overall opinion that they're in order with the accounting standards.
It's still very important to highlight these numbers so that everyone is understanding. So thank you for your patience and thanks for bringing that forward, Councillor Vickers. Please go ahead.
Okay. The liabilities totaled $18.8 million, so a decrease of $400,000 from the prior year. There were a significant decrease in the accounts payable, and that's really due to just timing of when your capital projects are on the go. At the end of December in 2020, you had more projects on the go than in 2020, and those payments are just made after the year end. I do want to highlight the deferred revenue that's in the liability section of $7.4 million. So that includes your unspent gas tax, the MTO funding, recreational land and development charges. So that's revenue that you have received. And it shows as a liability until you spend it. And then once you spend it, then it becomes revenue to match the expenses that you see on your income statement. So it's really essentially, it's an obligatory reserve fund. So it is money that's similar to your reserves and reserve funds. It's just shown in a different spot on your financial statements. That brings us down to the net financial assets of $5.1 million. So this is a key financial indicator. A positive number, a large positive number means that you have resources available for the future. There was a significant increase in 2021, and that's because you had a significant increase in your reserves and your reserve funds of 5.8. So you've set aside money
for the future that can be used in the future. This will only decrease if you spend your reserves. I know you are anticipating some new debt for some of your unfinanced capital relating to the water projects in the library. So I just want to highlight that that's not going to decrease your net financial assets. That's basically going to replenish the cash that has already been paid towards those projects. So getting that new debt won't negatively affect your net financial position. Questions to that? Because that's kind of important to note. On the next page is the statement of operations. So that's your transactions for the year. Total revenues were $31.5 million. The revenues include all your external revenues for both operating and capital. The most significant difference on there is the taxation increase, and that is from the money received from the province for the payment in lieu from the prior years is attributing to the increase from the prior year, and also the difference from the budget, because there is a significant difference there. So I want to make sure that everyone's aware that that's not from a whole bunch of ratepayers. That's
That was a question that was asked, so certainly you've clarified that.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Go
ma'am. So we can ask as we go.
Yep, please.
So it's jumped up a couple $1 million. You said province. Was the PILT from the federal government not in that?
Sorry, the federal government,
Okay.
not the provincial
I'm
government.
sorry.
My mistake.
You had me confused.
You're
My
listening,
mistake.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. So then the expenses, they total $22.6 million. And when you are looking at a comparison between the budget and actual, your budget amounts do not include amortization. So the actual amounts look to be significant higher than your budget. But if you take out the amortization, which is just an accounting number, it's not an actual cash outlay, your actual expenditures would be 18.2 actual expenditures compared to your 19.7 million budgeted. So your actual expenses were significantly lower than your budgeted amounts. That brings us down to the annual surplus of 8.8. So that's the revenues less the expenses. However, again, it's important to note that that's not an operating surplus. That is not an excess amount that's created. That's not an excess. It's not the operating surplus, so that's not the amount that goes forward to your next year's budget. The annual surplus that you see on the statement of operations focuses on the long term. Councillor?
Councillor Vickers.
Sure. So my question is, I remember in 2021, we didn't complete a bridge project. So we budgeted the year before, it got too expensive. So is this where the expense goes? Like, because it was actually an expense that was never really meant to be used, because we were actually banking the money to then be able to complete it the following year. So does it still hit the expenses then and then goes into reserves, or? Okay,
so there's two things there. There's a difference between an operating expense and a capital expense. Okay. So what you're seeing on this statement of operations is just the operating side of it. Okay. So the capital assets you'll see on the next page. And those get capitalized and shown on your balance sheet. So when you look at this 8.8 million annual surplus, that's money that has to be used towards paying for your capital assets and your long-term debt payments. So that's why that amount, that annual surplus, needs to be a very high positive, always a high positive number.
Can you say that one more time again?
The annual surplus that you see here is the revenues for both operating and capital, less the operating expenses. So that annual surplus of 8.8 is then used to pay for your capital expenditures and your principal and interest payments on your debt. Okay, so that's why you want that number to be high. So that's the differentiation between your operating surplus, which is
is what you budget for in your budget process. That's not the same number. Okay. So let's take this 8.8 and flip that to the next page. So the 8.8 on your next page on the statement of changes in net financial assets. So we take that 8.8 and then we subtract the actual acquisitions of your capital purchases, and then we add back the paper number of the amortization to bring you down to your increase or decrease in net financial assets of 3.4. So again, that 3.4 number can be negative or positive. It depends on where you are in your budgeting cycle, because from the 3.4 does not include the transfers to capital. So if you had a bridge that you had budgeted for, you hadn't spent the money, then that would show in a positive amount there, and then you would transfer it to reserve for the next year. Question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it shows a budget of 4.1 negative, and the actual was 3.4 in the positive. Can you just?
Yeah. So if you look up on the page, you budgeted for 12.5 million in capital assets, and you only spent 9.7. So you were budgeting to spend more in capital projects, and that's negative because you were going to take that money from reserves and use it to pay for those expenses. So a negative in your net financial assets means you're taking money from reserves. The positive means that you didn't spend all of the stuff that you didn't spend all that you budgeted for. So now you're going to put it into reserve for the next year. So that's why, I mean, it doesn't need to be positive or negative. It just depends on whether you're transferring to or from reserves. Okay. And then the last statement is just the actual cash flows that go through your cash in your in your actual bank account. So there was a net increase in your cash of $2 million. So the municipality ended the year with an operating surplus, and you did increase your reserves by 5.8. Your net financial asset position increased, which is a positive financial indicator. And again, it will not be impacted by the new debt that you're expected to use to replace to finance those existing capital assets. So the municipality just needs to ensure that you got sufficient funds in your budget to be able to pay for those principal and interest payments on the future long-term debt. All right, so that's a very high level overview. Are there any questions?
We've asked some along the way. Are there any further questions for Tracy? Councillor Vickers, please go ahead.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. And it's not that I'm doubting the process or anything else. It is good to try and get a bit of a feel and understanding of the of the whole budgeting and the auditing process. So if you go to, and I had it figured out in my other tab, if you go to Appendix B, which is I think it's after the notes.
Appendix B is our independence.
That's right. And that was
okay.
I have a question in that.
Okay.
So I'm getting to it. Here it is. So on page 144 of 255 is the independence, and it was so it's 145. So you talked about your independence, but you spoke in one sentence there about having done some of the work, which then kind of jeopardized the independence, if I understood it right. And I just looking for more clarification there.
Yep.
I think on the second bullet there, we have provided assistance in preparation of the financial statements, including adjusted journal entries and bookkeeping services. These services created do you know where?
Yep.
So can you help me understand what that all means?
Yeah. So the financial statements are, as I said, management's responsibility for preparing. And so what we do, we assist the management
by taking their internal financial statements and their trial balance and rearranging the numbers so that they're in accordance with public sector accounting standards. So there's some adjustments that get made to your internal financial statements for amortization, for post-employment benefits that are public sector adjustments that are not reflected on your operating budget. And that's according to legislation, you're not required to include them because they're of a long-term impact. So what we do is we assist management in basically formatting your internal records into what you see in your package here. So then if there are entries that we suggest to rearrange things, then we need to get management to approve those because we just don't do the journal entries and say, here's your financial statement. So we go over that, anything that changes with the management team to make sure that they are comfortable with it and that they agree with what we're suggesting for those changes.
And this is a common thing
Yes.
for all municipalities. This is how it kind of works. You go through it and you look at it and you make suggestions and then.
Yeah, I am responsible for auditing 17 municipalities. And I only have one that mostly prepares their own financial statement. Okay. So it is very common that we would assist, but we just have to bring that.
They just have to declare.
We have to declare that everybody is aware that we do discussions with the management team to anything that we suggest be changed, they have to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good questions. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And could be Tracy, could be Val. So every year our reserves go up. And we've always been told it's because we don't spend the money that we were supposed to. Projects didn't get done. It's ballooned again this year. Is there a major reason for it ballooning like that? It's on page 127 is the
a big chunk of that was the federal payment in lieu that you received from prior years. Okay. So that was a significant portion of it. And then the other portion would be capital projects. Anything else?
Not gone through.
That didn't proceed.
That's what I thought. I was just wondering if I missed something. Thank you.
No.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a comment that maybe some of us that serve on some of the boards that have to put their financials into the municipality. I take it that the work that they do was pretty fair, pretty good. You must have reviewed them like from the BIA or from some of the halls and so on that have their own finances. Can we as council members go back to those organizations and say that you're doing a pretty good job?
Yeah, so they are still in progress for this current year. We still have to get the approvals from the boards to release those final financial statements. We were just trying to make sure that we got this one to you that as early as possible. But they are consolidated in here and we have audited those, yes.
I'm not seeing any further questions, Tracy, so I will thank you again.
All right.
For your patience and your understanding and thorough presentation to us. We're very pleased, obviously, with the results and the work that you've done and the work that we've done. Thank you very much. So with that, no further questions. I'm sorry, Rob had a question. No, I didn't see your hand, Rob. Then I will call a question. All in favor of receive this 2021 financial statement, and that is carried. Moving on to DEV 2022-18 and a corresponding bylaw 2022-65 for the zoning amendment on Union Street. And have a mover and a seconder, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Bartley. Thank you. And open it up for questions. Not seeing any questions. We've got Councillor Bell.
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor. Not so much a question, but looking through the report, as I'm sure all my fellow councillors did, to me, it makes sense. It's a decent sized frontage and it's got decent depth to it. And I agree that we should move forward on this.
Okay. And not seeing any further questions or comments. So I will call the question. All in favor of this recommendation, and that is carried. Moving on to FIN 2022-17 and the corresponding bylaw 2022-66. As be it resolved that the bylaw approves an infrastructure renewal fee policy and that it be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and a seconder, please to put that on the table. Councillor Vickers and Councillor Kentner. And we'll open up that for questions, comments. Councillor Bell first.
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor. And Madam Mayor, I appreciate your phone call last night, as you've been pretty good doing that on your tenure to engage with your council. On this one, I'm not going to vote in favor of this one. Mr. Clerk, you might find this interesting. I do enjoy looking into the Municipal Act where you clearly quoted absolutely accurately the section in the Municipal Act which applies. When I read the Municipal Act, what I often do is I like to read the section before the one that's used and the one that's after. It kind of solidifies some things in my own mind. I found this in part 12, section 391, as clearly and quite accurately put in our council's package. One of the things it said in the section which dealt with deferred benefits, it used the term that we may choose to do this. Our report clearly said that this engagement of doing this started in 2014. Our report says about how many landowners will be affected. It gives us an estimate of the revenues that we could possibly glean from this. The report also told us how many people showed up to have impact statements. 11, I think I've got that right. So the turnout to have an opinion rendered on something that will affect them is about the same kind of turnout as we get for voters. It's around 17%. So the people who are affected, they did come out. And for myself, when it says that we may choose to do this, and looking to gather about another $50,000, I think that choosing to do this, and it says we may, I don't feel that I want to send an invoice for something that somebody's actually not using. I see it quite clearly in the future, whether someone even currently has a well, and in the future, if that water's available, they will hook up, get their meter, and they will start paying. I think too that I understand it. Like I said, Mr. Clerk, I read the Municipal Act on it, and it's well within our legal means to do this. There's no question. But for me, sending them an invoice for the infrastructure that's out in the ground, out in front of their property, when those folks bought that property, yeah, obviously they had some money in order to do that. They bought other property. Sending them a bill for the estimate in here was a little over $700. You know, it probably won't really impact them a big deal. Another $700, $800 a year. But for me, when I looked at that where it says we may choose to do this, I just don't think that I'll support that today, fellow councillors. I just think that coming out of COVID, more money being asked of people, I just think that we really don't have to do this. And we've just received our financials. We've got a lot of money in reserves. So asking folks to do this, if it was an inspiration to have them build, I don't see for $700-800 that this is going to inspire them to just get a building put up. And I think Mr. Kettner, Councillor Kettner, you kind of were thinking that maybe originally, maybe you weren't, but it was to inspire some building happenings on these vacant lots. So I thank you for listening to me. I hope you consider that I've thought about this from the aspect that I've tried to present, but I will not be supporting this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
No, thank you, Councillor Bell. Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Bartley.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And Councillor Bell, please know how much your comments are appreciated. I guess I looked at this from a slightly different perspective, and I happened to think about one particular developer who has had property on Highway 26 for many years now, and has had these services passing out the front of that particular project and has not gone forward, and don't have any idea whether this invoice in the mail will spur that on or not, but hopefully it does get this particular individual thinking about this very valuable piece of property and what might happen to it. And my other thought is in relation to those of us on services currently who are looking at 8% increases for the past few years and in the years going forward. And not that $50,000 is going to make a big difference to that, but I think at least it demonstrates that this council is aware that those increases are challenging for people financially, and that we have found one small method of attempting to make some small dent in those 8% numbers. So for those reasons, I will support this report today. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question. Is this common practice? Is there other municipalities already doing this in Grey County?
Over to you, Rob.
Through your worship. So this policy actually was developed as a similar policies in place for the town of the Blue Mountains. In addition, I did query some of the other Grey County municipalities, and Chatsworth actually applies this charge for their water system, whether you're connected or not. I think some call it a different thing, but in the end of the day, it's the same thing. So I'm aware Chatsworth. I didn't get around to all the municipalities to ask, but I know that's two that for sure do have this policy in place.
Thank you. And I too have inquired, and I found the same thing. I just wanted it out there that this isn't a made in Meaford thing. It's out there. I can support this because, like, just for instance, my pump quit at home on the farm this weekend, and I paid $3,700 for a pump. If the infrastructure in front of these lots need fixed, it's there, it needs paid for, and I can support them kicking in to pay for the upkeep of that sewer and water, because we all know that the rates are high, and to keep it the way it's supposed to be, it costs money. So I have no issue putting this in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley and Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks to Councillor Bell. I appreciate his comments. Some good statements. I will be supporting this recommendation. I happened to work down the Blue Mountains a few years ago when the water lines were going down Highway 26 to the east, and I heard horror stories at that time of properties going to cost anywhere from $15,000 to $18,000 to $25,000 because these pipes were across the front. It got settled. The people went along with it, and so this is nothing new. As Councillor Bartley says, hey, if you're on a well, maybe $15,000 to get a well drilled that may not have any water in it at the end of the day. So this is quite an advantage. I maybe I'm wrong, but I sort of relate this to some of our buildings in well, across the municipality, I'm thinking more of the downtown area that people have owned and have sat on for perhaps a decade or more with nothing being done. And so to me, there's a bit of a relationship here. Hey, the service is there, the potential is there. It's up to the owners to take that advantage and make good use of it. And I mean, you can throw out $50,000 as not being big cash in today's municipal world. I suppose it isn't, but going forward in the future, with the rate of inflation and the cost of replacing infrastructure, all infrastructure, we're going to need every cent we can accumulate. And there's an opportunity here, can be done. I say we should be going for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. Councillor Kentner.
Thank you through your worship. Appreciate your point of view, Councillor Bell, but I just want to be very clear that emphatically I do support this. I think it is fair to the majority of people who are not waiting for a big payday somewhere down the road, taking advantage of the services that their neighbors are paying for. So thank you.
Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I have a question. I read in the report, and I just want clarification that that it's correct, that these lots are actually taking up a
Services.
spot. Yeah, like a spot in the queue sort of thing, because we know we only have so many spots.
Yeah.
And but some of the new development, like the Loon and Skydev and the Legion property, they get assigned spots, like hookups, I guess is what they're called, after they make it so far down the planning stage. But these single lots are actually they're taking up their spot whether they use it or not. Is that a fair?
Yeah,
That's correct.
that's correct, Your Worship. So when a property becomes registered and available for a building permit, we have to hold the spot within our sewage plant. That's where the concern is because of capacity water plant. We have the capacity, but there's also line infrastructure that needs replacing. So needs are different, but the same issue. We have to hold the spot within the plant for them, and they haven't paid a cent for that lot towards the plant. So you are correct that we have to maintain capacity for them.
Yeah, and when I've been out campaigning here in the last few weeks, I ran across a person that had one of these lots, and they weren't happy. And I tried to explain to them the reasons why, what we were told by staff and what we accepted. And in the end, I don't think he was any more happy, but he did feel like that we maybe did have some justification. So I know it's a tough pill to swallow, but we sometimes have to make those hard decisions. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Is there anything further? I think that your point was well taken. This is a user pay service, and those who are on the system and using the system must be as responsible for the upkeep and so on. And those lots that are on the service but have not contributed at all should be equally responsible for upkeep and repairs that have to be done. So I too will be voting for this motion going forward. And with that, Councillor Bell, back to you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Can we have a recorded vote?
Certainly. Over to you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So the question on the floor is, be it resolved that bylaw 2022-66, being a bylaw to approve an infrastructure renewal fee policy, be taken as read a first, second and third time as finally passed. We start as always with the person that requested the recorded vote. Councillor Bell.
No.
Councillor Bartley.
Yes.
Councillor Greenfield.
Yes.
Councillor Kentner.
Yes.
Councillor Vickers.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Yes.
Mayor Clumpus.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-1.
Thank you for that. Moving on to another bylaw, 2022-67 is to appoint a municipal auditor. Recommendation that this bylaw for the term of 2023 to 26, and that be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. I have a mover and a seconder, please, Councillor, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Vickers. Thank you. Comments, questions, discussion on this? Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Smith or Ms. Manning. Did we go to tender for this?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there was an RFP process, yes.
If that's subsequent,
if
please
I
go
may,
ahead.
I'm hoping we got more than one response to the RFP. Is that correct?
Over to you.
No, we did not. However, we can't ask for other people to.
Please go ahead.
Well, certainly if Ms. Smith can continue to bring us favorable audit reports like we saw today, then I'm satisfied with the deal.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. CAO, did you have a comment? No comment. All right, any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, and that is carried. That brings us to the Committee of the Whole and a motion to move into Committee of the Whole. Councillor Vickers and Councillor Bell, thank you. At 2:31. All in favor of moving into Committee of the Whole, and that is carried. First item for discussion under CAO 2022-39 is the Municipal Capital Facilities Agreement for 390 Sykes Street. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Vickers. And open it up for discussion. Report was fairly self-explanatory, but anyone have a question? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the term, we're partway through the term of this lease, is that correct?
To your worship, that's correct. And through this new agreement, we're rolling the lease into it under the same term. So it'll be something for the new council to consider whether we extend it in a couple of years, but it's just maintaining the existing commitment.
So this will come back to the new council whether we keep the spot or not.
Correct, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Anything further? Then I will call the question. All in favor of this report going forward, and that is carried. Under Community Services, we have COM 2022-26 is the Ontario Land Tribunal appeal received for 12 Bayfield Street, 23 and 37 Trowbridge Street East. And we received this for information purposes. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Greenfield. Councillor Kentner, thank you. Open it up for discussion, commentary. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to begin, I wonder if I could ask Mr. Armstrong just to give a little explanation of how we got where we are. We know in the report that it suggests that we had a complete application from Apparence, and it also suggests that council did not make an approval within the timeframe. Mr. Smith kind of touched on that in an earlier response, but just for clarity for everyone here and everyone listening, if we could just gain a better understanding of how we got here.
Your Worship, and it's expanding on Matt's earlier comments. The Planning Act, although those timeframes had been in place, have been in place for some time, the majority of the times developers would like to work with the municipality and come to resolve, because really it's not typically in their best interest. However, based on the recent changes in the Planning Act, in the more that the municipality shall, and then reducing fees, developers are seeing that there's more of a need to take this approach and get it right to the OLT that. And our concern is that it's removed that ability to work with developers because the time frame's so tight. We've been very successful in the past. I think about a couple of key developments that could have easily ended up at the previous tribunals. However, we've been able to resolve. Unfortunately, with the changes made provincially, it's handcuffed staff a bit in our ability to do that, and well within the developer's right to do that. Whether we agree with it or not, we're following the rules.
Is that all right with you? Are you happy with that?
I am. I have further questions, but that's okay. Go to
All right,
Councillor
we'll go
Kentner.
to other ones then. Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Armstrong. I'm kind of confused in that I see floating around on the internet a new plan for this property, which looks quite a bit more appealing than what they've taken to the. And I'm just which plan are they taking to the land tribunal?
So I'll take this one. Generally, official appeals come through the clerk's department because then we have some degree of a step away from the planning team who may or may not have made an opinion on things. In this case, they haven't because they didn't bring a report to council. What they would have appealed was what their application was for. Their application was presumably for what they brought to the public meeting. A new plan may have come forward had we continued to go through the process, but because they've appealed for what they asked for originally.
Can I just ask, has anybody any idea why they would submit a new plan, a much more appealing plan at a time when they're taking the old plan to the tribunal?
So they haven't submitted a plan. They may have been publicizing things themselves, but that's very much up to them. Really, at this stage, we can't talk about what the planning implications of any of their submissions or proposed submissions are because that's now in the jurisdiction of the tribunal. This is going to be a report that you see fairly frequently, not necessarily about this one, or hopefully not, but I assume fairly frequently, because what we're going to do going forward is every time there is an appeal, we will bring forward a notice like this to notify council and the public that it exists. Any conversation around the planning elements of it will then likely take place in closed session with the municipality solicitor, because that's the person that represents us at the tribunal. And that's one of the things before legislative tribunals, and solicitor-client privilege is obviously one of the things that we can do in closed session. So if and when we have updates for this, it'll come in closed to get direction from council, and then we'll see where the tribunal takes us.
Thank you for that, Rob. And over to you.
Yeah, through your worship. So with this process, do we know whether we're going to defend ourselves or not? Or is this a question I can ask in open council?
So that's going to be the question that the new council will have to decide. Right now, this has been received. We've had an acknowledgement from the RLT that it exists, but we haven't had any further information about case dates or mediators or anything like that. So once we do get to that stage, then we'll come to closed session to talk about what our advice to you is, and then council will give some direction.
And back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to carry on, first of all, that's very concerning, Mr. Smith, to think that we're going to have to deal with this process perhaps going forward, that this is becoming a bit of a pattern and kind of changing the way in which we as a council have the opportunity, or does the public, to address and influence developments.
So I don't think when I say that, I mean because anything has changed particularly. What's changed is that there's actually some large developments going through the planning process in the municipality right now. If you look at neighbouring jurisdictions such as Blue Mountains, or go a little further to Collingwood, or pretty much anywhere in southern Ontario that's had any development over the last decade or so, appeals are commonplace. Whether that be because council has rejected an application and the developer wants to move forward, whether it's because the council has approved an application and somebody in the public doesn't think it should move forward, and so on. As a municipality, we've been really lucky because we haven't really had appeals. We've had 2 in the 7 years I've been around, but that's because the development types have been limited. I think it's much more likely that we will get some, the larger the things are and the more complicated it is.
And if I may, just back to the company themselves, Averance. just wondering what we really know about them. Their communication is not good. I mean, I know I spoke to finding out about the first project on Facebook, which was concerning. And then there's this press release that comes out and council's not aware of it. So I'm just wondering what we really know about these folks. Have they completed other successful developments? I know there's 2 on their website for Wasaga Beach, Wasaga Riviera condos and Wasaga Lux condos. Are those projects completed and full? Or what do we know about their reputation?
So I know absolutely nothing about this company, but I also don't have to. And also, to be honest, neither do council. What the company is like and what they've done in the past or what they may or may not do has perhaps, unfortunately, no place in the planning world at all. If they've met the terms of the Planning Act and the provincial policy statement and the official plan and the zoning bylaw, it literally could be anybody.
I think one of the controls that we do have, excuse me, Rob, I'll just preempt you there for half a second, is the fact that we are going to be requiring pre-meetings before a developer comes into play. Is that something that is going to help with this dilemma where there's a discussion ongoing to make sure that there's a level playing field and all of the information is very clear to the developer what expectations are and so on.
Just to expand, Matt, on the go forward as well, if there's anything of public interest that needs to be secured by the municipality when they do proceed, we have a site plan agreement with securities, financial securities that are in place to protect the municipality, and that's our role.
Okay. And we'll start. Councillor Bartley and work our way around.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So you mentioned if the time runs out, we owe money. Can you explain that a little bit more?
So the way the legislation has been written, and I might get Denise to do some specifics. You had a report a couple of months ago from Rob Voigt about this. Basically, if we now go past the timeline, the applicant is able to ask for their money back. It doesn't say they automatically will. It doesn't say that we have to just automatically cut a check, but they're able to ask their money back. And it's a graduated refund as well. So, you know, if it's a month overdue, it'll be a portion of their fees. If it gets up to a certain length of time, which Denise may be able to remember, then we have to give all the fees back.
How much money are we talking?
Whatever the fee we set is.
Are we talking $1,000, $100,000? What would
well, so our fee for zoning bylaw amendment right now is 25,000. I'll try and pull that up while we're talking. Yeah, it depends on the application and on the size of it. It depends on, but really, you know, it is whatever council has set this to be through the fees and charges bylaw.
Okay, while you're looking that up, Matt, the question was asked tonight by a constituent, how did we get into this position? I can't answer that question. Yeah. It came to us once. I have some serious concerns about it. And boom, we're at LPAT. I don't understand the process, and I'm quite disappointed in the proponent. Thank you.
So the application fee for a major, and I believe this probably would have been major OPA and zoning bylaw amendment combined, is $26,000 under the 2022 bylaw. I do know that we are likely to come forward with the new fees and charges bylaw and have some of these fees changed fairly significantly because the cost to process these, especially the cost to process them fast, is significant.
All right, Councillor Bell, over to you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. My question is on page 210. And it's the last 2 or 3 lines. So as the process unfolds, parties will be identified along with their respective issues. The staff will report back to council seeking further direction in the future, once additional details on this appeal are available. My question is, will that constitute a closed meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you again, Your Worship. A couple of questions for either Mr. Armstrong or Ms. McCarroll. the Everons made a presentation to us at our planning meeting, May 16th. If you check your calendar, they pretty well hit the 120 days, pretty close. I think they did give us maybe an extra week. I guess you could say that's fair or very unfair. Concerning the Georgian Bay Harbor development, which we're discussing, did staff get any advance indicate? Well, a couple of things. First, did you get any advance indication that the Everons people were very anxious to go forward? Secondly, did Everons come back with any concessions, any change in their plan? Was there anything there that indicated maybe there could be some give and take on this development?
Over to you, Denise.
Thank you, Your Worship. So to the first question was, did we have advance indication that they were planning to appeal? The answer is no. I was not given advance information to say that they were thinking of appealing. The second question, I believe, was, did they come back with any concessions to change or alter any of aspects of their proposal? Staff had not finished conducting the review of the proposal. As you know, it was quite substantial. So the 120 days isn't a lot of time for something like this. So in the future, we'll be looking at how we can flesh out more information ahead of time so that when we get to the complete application, maybe we are a little bit further along than we were in this case. That could be through the pre-consultation process or some other means. But that, to answer that, I think the answer is no, they weren't in a position they didn't provide any changes, but at the same time, staff did not provide back a long list of feedback to say these are all the things that we need, because we didn't quite get to that point yet.
So we can follow up with a question within that 120 days of the complete application submission. Does that mean the staff report has to come back to council within that 120 days? So if the public presentation is a week short of the 120 days, it doesn't give staff much time to bring forward an analysis of all of the commentary and the applications.
So, Your Worship, that's correct. So I believe the complete application date was something like March 1st or 3rd or something like that. So by the time we got to the public meeting, we're more than 60 days in. So more than half the time. So there isn't a lot of time to get to that point. We could delay a public meeting, but I don't know that that would change anything, but definitely today's timelines are quick. As Matt had indicated in the past, this was, and in some municipalities, this has been routinely done, appeals on the timelines. In our case, generally, most developers know that that's not to their advantage, because the process of going through the appeal is longer, usually than proceeding through the normal channels. However, with the multiple changes under the Planning Act, the kind of stricterness about the timelines is just one aspect, but there's all kinds of other things like Section 37, bonusing being no longer applicable, and some other things that has exacerbated this. I don't expect to see an appeal every 2 weeks from now on or anything like that. So if that's what council's wondering about, I don't think that that's the case.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I might be going up the tree the wrong way here. 120 days is probably ample time to build a house or get the planning for a house built, but something major like this. So do we have to go back to the provincial government, send a letter to try to lobby for a large development? 120 days just is not enough. Should we be lobbying the government with a letter for that? Thank you.
My advice to council on this one, as it is, to be honest, with quite a lot of these things, is that we can but it perhaps isn't worth the effort because this government has made it exceptionally clear that their priority is to build more houses. And by passing the legislation that they passed earlier in the year, which was specifically designed to make this happen faster, they are going to take one look at a letter that says it should take longer and throw it in the trash.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's the best approach here is the one that Rob has brought forward and Denise just mentioned is let's deal with things up front through pre-consultation so that when we get to a complete application, we're more in a position to facilitate in a shorter time frame. I think that's the approach that planning staff has recommended as our way to dealing with it.
And that has been brought before council for discussion. We have certainly agreed with that. It makes ultimate sense to start a conversation in advance of any kind of appeals needed and so on. So thank you for that, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if the timeline being talked about a lot, we can call a special meeting of council just to deal with one thing. If time was running out, what would the timeline be for proper notification that there's a meeting of council happening if we need to call one?
So yes, we can have special meetings, but now that these rules are in place, what the planning team will be doing in consultation with my team is scheduling out public meetings and scheduling out when reports are going to come to council based on the deadline. So the difference here is that we've never needed to calculate what that 128 days is before. Now we will. So we'll also know when the council meeting just before the 120 days is.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Denise, just for clarification, so at this point in time, are we refunding money to Averance? And the second part of my question, without divulging anything that would be closed session or legal information, do you feel we have any grounds to stand on in this case?
Through you, Your Worship. So just to full disclosure right now, I'm not going to be able to answer the second question, but maybe we can answer something that would help. So the first question was, do we have to refund any fees? So no, that the fee refunding begins, to my understanding, of course, some of this is blurring together because of so many changes, but I believe it's January 1st, 2023. So as of then, we will start the timeline. And so we will be on all files kind of fleshing out, as we talked about, the 120 days and also what the requirements for returning fees might look like. Because the first step would be a return of 50% of the fees. The second step would be 75% a month later, and then the full return following that. I think it's a month later. So it's not a fee return immediately if we don't finish something within 120 days. But to answer the question about do we have a leg to stand on, I think what we're expecting is for the applicant to reach out to us and start to work on some of these things ahead. Usually the planners talk ahead of time. And in my experience over the last few years, we've tried to deal with some of these things anyways. We didn't just kind of put it on a shelf, wait for the appeal to play out, because I don't think that's in anyone's best interest. And we want to work on as much ahead of time so we're not under the crunch at the time of a case management conference or putting together lists or anything like that for our issues. So we will continue to do whatever work is necessary on all of our files, obviously within our workloads. We're not just shelving it for now because we still have to be able to, once we get to that point where we're being asked to provide some information to the OLT, we have to at least have done a review. We can't say, well, we didn't look at anything because it was under appeal. We actually still have to review it. So we'll continue to do that so that when we do bring something to council, we have, really good information for council to review in closed meeting.
Okay.
I think, Madam Mayor, if I can just add to that, just thinking about the future, We obviously have another appeal that's ongoing at the moment as well. And we are currently planning for the municipal solicitor to come and do some Planning Act and OLT education fairly soon after the new council takes office. And then that will actually that day roll into a conversation about that appeal and possibly even this one, depending on what we know about timelines at that stage as well. So, I think a lot of this that's going on right now is a bit unknown for all of us who are sat here because it's all pretty new and we're sort of trying to grapple with what it all looks like. And the OLT is completely new as well, because although it's a follow-on to the OMB and to the LPAT, it is different to the OMB and the LPAT. So we are all learning as we go. So there'll be plenty of information coming council's way, and that education we will do in public so that people can sort of help understand as well from the public side of things.
Thank you for that, Matt. And Councilor Vickers, you had a question?
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. Would it almost get to the point, Denise or Rob, that you actually don't accept their permit, their application? Because, you can do the timeline backwards and say, there's no way we're going to get this one done. So do all of a sudden you say, nope, doors closed for now and you'll have to wait or is that possible?
You okay with me answering you? Okay. I can never remember whether I'm on or off here. So I think some municipalities have tried to kind of do the closed door. That's not possible unless you have some kind of tools and process to stop accepting applications. And I'm not going to get into the details of what those tools might be. But in this case, we don't anticipate doing that. However, through us having the pre-consultation process or the pre-app process, what we anticipate that meaning is by the time, fleshing out those really big issues, like if they're trying to do something that we just feel is not possible, like we don't have any way to service something in a million years, that's never going to be able to service something, 40 kilometers away from sewer system or something like that. Or some other big issue, we will identify it ahead if we think it's very premature. And for the most part, things that we're seeing are not in that boat. There's issues that have been cropped up, but it's not that they are asking to do something that is 100% not permitted at all in the municipality. Like changing residential to commercial in an area where we want residential or something like that. If that happens, we'll identify it up front with those folks. So, but I think what you're getting at is, what are our options if they bring something that we can't approve within that time? And those are great questions because we have been wondering that ourselves. What are our tools? The pre-consultation is one tool. Another tool is that if we feel it can't be approved, we could bring it for a refusal. So we could recommend refusal of something. I don't know that would necessarily be the best option because there still could be an appeal because if someone's went to the point of applying. But those are things that we can do. There have been things like that I've dealt with before in my past experience where somebody's brought something that's just way too premature for us to consider now. And we have recommended refusal on that or told them we were thinking about that's the direction we're going to go. And they may have decided during that process, hearing that revising to some degree. So I think we're going to always try to work with them to resolve things, which is what we always do to try to, before we get to council, we don't try to bring things that we want to refuse to you. We try to work ahead and resolve everything and then say, okay, we're ready to go. I think that's always the goal.
Go ahead, Councilor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Denise, for your information. I'm just going to throw out two or three things quickly, and I don't know if there's any value in an OLT appeal process or not, but I do think our public needs to know a few things. This property has historically been a floodplain, and I won't say anything more about that. That's how it's been treated for the last many, many decades. That's a floodplain. You don't do anything there. Our planning department is Ms. McCarroll, Rob, and especially Mr. Voigt have been extremely busy with an official plan review for the last several months. there hasn't been a lot of spare time on their calendar, and I think they've done a great job preparing this official plan review. Councillor Vickers and I have heard of this over Grace Auble, the 120 days. Get your decision made. There are, as I understand it, a shortage of qualified planners in the province. There are some junior planners coming on; they're doing a good job. But this development is, I mean, you can couple it along with SkyDev. This is major for our area. So I hope our public will be a bit patient with us. Yes, we're taking a hit, and yes, we wish we were in a better position, but we're going to examine, do the research, do what we can, and hopefully get the best results for our municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. Any further comments? A lot of really good information to share here. Thank you very much for that. And I will now call a question, all in favor of the recommendation to receive this for information purposes. And that is carried. Okay, moving on to the building reports. We have two, July and August. Councillor Greenfield.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I'm honored that you chose.
It's been a long tradition.
To comment on these two reports. I'm going to go to the August report, and I think it's very flattering. This is after 8 months of construction this year. No, we don't have a long-term care permit on here, and no, we don't have a huge JK to grade 12 school included in this. But we're sitting at over $42 million worth of permits. And if you go back to 2020 and most of the late teen years, our end of year permits totaled about the same as this amount after 8 months. So I don't think you can argue that this is not impressive. I think it's a great report. Yes, a lot of the numbers are down, but we're still trying, and the construction company, everyone trying to get back used to this new normal, whatever it is. And so I think we got a lot to be proud of, and we've still got 4 months to go.
Thank you for that. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Rob, could somebody look at the July report and the 2021? I don't think the numbers seem like they really jive. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but just if it is going to be a report, it doesn't just seem like the numbers are quite right. We went from basically $19 million at this time in 2021 to 82 million, if my glasses. 82 million. I think there's some numbers wrong there. So there's all that done in 1 month last year. Okay, I stand corrected. I apologize for.
No, good to bring it forward. Any further on that? I'm not seeing anything further coming forward, so we'll move on now to the variance report. And any comments or questions on that? Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, thank you. Just one question. Recognizing, obviously, we've been through a couple of really difficult years, but recognizing the challenge with getting projects completed and knowing we've had to carry forward several projects for the last few years, are we likely to be in that position again this year, or do we feel like we're getting relatively caught up in our capital projects?
I think lots of us might want to speak to this.
We'll go with the CAO first. Okay.
On the facility side, there are definitely going to be some that are being carried forward. There's been a couple that, due to some unfortunate staffing issues, we've not got all the way through, and there's been some we just can't find contractors for, particularly some of the smaller projects like washrooms and so on. So there will be a few there that are postponed, and we're looking at different ways to go about doing those next year to try and make sure that they can happen.
Anything further? I'm not seeing anything. Then we will just accept this as presented. Thank you. And on to updates from members appointed to county council and committees. Start with you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Grey County Council did meet last Thursday morning, the 22nd. After the acceptance of council and Board of Health minutes, where Dr. Era shared that our COVID numbers are decreasing and that influenza vaccines will be available late October or early November. Bylaw 5145-22, official plan number 11 was back on the floor for discussion. You'll recall that we had considerable debate about the appropriateness of language surrounding future secondary planning areas. We talked about that last meeting, which would provide the town of Hanover room to grow with development lands coming from within the boundaries of West Grey. The opinion expressed by West Grey's lawyer and their mayor is that these discussions should occur between the two municipalities at the local level, and that the language should not be within the OP 11 for the fact that it was felt that it could set precedent. The reality is, in my opinion, that any of our borders are vulnerable. Owen Sound could say at any point in time that they need to expand and come into our borders. So it was a really relevant and important discussion. Councillor Mackey brought forward a very valid point regarding on-farm diversified uses, suggesting that adequate public and stakeholder support had not been sought. The concern is that farmland is being taken for those uses, and perhaps some are better suited to an industrial park setting, recognizing that rural roads are not always designed for additional tractor trailer traffic. The amendment allows for on-farm diversified uses to operate on a parcel of 10 hectares rather than the 20 hectares previously required. It was agreed in a recorded vote to postpone further discussion on the entire bylaw until the 13th of October to allow time for staff to obtain solicitor feedback on any proposed amendments to the update. Overall, official plan amendment number 11 brings many good policies regarding uses such as ADUs, additional dwelling units, short-term rental accommodations, and much more. Council does want to see the amendment move forward as soon as possible, but with agreeable language. The Agricultural Committee is going to have a special meeting on October the 7th to further add input on diversified farm uses. The inaugural meeting of the 2022 to 2026 Grey County Council will take place on Tuesday, December the 6th at 11 a.m. This meeting will be live streamed, but will be in person only. Council will at this time vote on their warden for the new term of council, which is the reason it has to be, all members of council have to be present. The Regional EV Network Partnership Study results were presented by Linda Swanston, our Manager of Climate Change Initiatives. We recognize that range anxiety is becoming a major concern for drivers of electric vehicles. If you're traveling from point A to point B, you want to make sure that there's an opportunity to find a charging station between your home and your destination. And depending on your vehicle, you just might run out of juice with where we are currently. A partnership of several counties such as Grey, Bruce, Huron, Perth, and Wellington have come together to pool resources with Dufferin County and the City of Guelph. Dufferin County will lead the process for hiring a facilitator. This individual will engage a third-party approach through a competitive procurement process to security company which would own, operate, and maintain charging stations in the participating counties. So County Council did agree to support this effort with a cost of $9,578. Just a little bit of information. There are 3 different types of charging stations. A level 1 can take 24 to 72 hours to charge a vehicle, basically using an extension cord. So that's not ideal. A level 2, which is the type present in most homes with an electric vehicle, takes 8 to 12 hours to charge, basically overnight. And a level 3 charges much more quickly and does require 3-phase power. The catch is that these rapid charging stations are not good for the lithium batteries that e-vehicles have. And they are very expensive, somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000. In any event, we did agree to go forward and 3 level 3 chargers, and they're going to do 2 in each location. So 3 locations with 2 in each. 6 level 3 chargers will be installed in Grey County, and it's been decided that 2 will be in Durham, 2 in Flesherton, and 2 in Thornbury. And that was it, Your Worship, unless you wish to add anything.
No, very thorough. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to ask it through Your Worship. I'd like to ask a question about this amendment number 11. Does anybody feel that they're trying to clump too much stuff all into one amendment to push it through? Because, we're talking about boundary limits. We're talking about, different sizes of scale of agriculture farms and putting it down to 10 hectares. There was one other thing you talked about there, Shirley. Is there any way of separating some of this stuff out that all of a sudden doesn't have to be passed? There isn't so much urgency for some of the items in the agenda as opposed to others.
And through Your Worship, to Councillor Vickers, there was some discussion surrounding that. Yes, official plan number 11 has been in the works for many months at the county level, and there have been several public meetings, and it's been, an ongoing discussion, and it does include many different aspects of planning. And we did, attempt to pull out the settlement areas, the issue between Hanover and West Grey, and that there'll be further discussion on that at our next meeting. But I think it's important that the amendment go forward because there is so much good material in it. But we have to address that issue, and the one of the farm diversified uses were the 2 that really were of concern to County Council. And I think we'll be able to resolve that. At least that's my assumption at our next meeting when county staff come back to us with further recommendations and legal insight into those 2 concerns. And I'll turn it over to our own staff. Maybe they want to add to that.
Another point to that, I think, is that there still is the opportunity at Grey County to pull out specific items from this memorandum going forward and making a decision or deferring any part of it as well. So there's still those options available. Okay, on to, if there's anything, Heritage Advisory Committee is next. Councillor Kentner. Oh, I'm sorry, but did you have a question on that?
No, I think Councillor Kentner was pointing at me or indicating.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. So you're going to go.
Committee. Yeah.
All right. Over to you then. Councillor.
Well, a fairly quiet committee meeting, but I think something that should be mentioned. A number of our Heritage Committee members are concerned about some of the signage in and on the front of some of our downtown stores. They don't completely comply to the Heritage Committee standards, and most of them have been checked up upon by our bylaw enforcement officers. Ms. Hines, Holly, was at her meeting, and certainly these and violations might be too strong a word, but these differences in signs are getting looked into. It's unfortunate that one might think, oh, geez, if your sign isn't proper, you simply change it. The process is not quite that simple and not quite that quick, but so the enforcement officers are looking into it and doing what they can, trying to move things along and get more compliance with the signage. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, any other boards or committees that folks want to talk on? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to move out of committee of the whole at 3:13. Mover and a seconder. Thank you, Steve. Councillor Bartley and Councillor Bell. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, there are no councillor motions that we're aware of today, but I'll ask if there's any notices coming forward. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to ask staff to bring a report forward, giving us information about noise bylaws, water or air pollution bylaws, and including the planning rules and regulations that pertain to that. If they, I went in hundreds of pages and I can't find everything I'm looking for, and I thought that would be a good thing for staff to bring forward so we know where we sit. Is what I want to bring forward. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. And we'll move on then to the adoption of the minutes of the council meeting September the 12th. Councillor Greenfield and Deputy Mayor, thank you. Comments or questions on this? And I'll call the question. All in favor of receiving these notice minutes? And that is carried. Is there anything on the communication file that needs further discussion? Anything that council would wish to bring forward? I'm not seeing any hands raised on that, so we'll move on to the confirming bylaw. And this is a recommendation, be it resolved that bylaw 2022-68 is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the municipality of Meaford at its regular and special meetings held in the month of September 2022. And that be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. A mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Bell, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Any comments, questions? All in favor? And that is carried. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of our prepared agenda. And with that, I will declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you all for your